Good morning, Mr. President. I am Shaligan Peterson from Namibia Press Agency. My first question is, Mr. President Kagame, over the last few weeks we've had town hall meetings, and one of the prominent issues around the country that came out was tribalism, and which causes a division within our country. Thinking back, or in relation to your history in your country and the tragedy that happened, you managed to build unity within the country. What is your recommendation or your thoughts on this?
Well, I will start by saying tribalism or any division or divisive politics is not good for anyone. It's not good for Namibia, it's not good for Rwanda, it's not good for any other country. But it is a problem that can be addressed. Just going by what we have also tried to do in my own country, I have no doubt that Namibia, if faced with such a problem, people have within themselves the capacity to overcome this challenge or any other challenge. Starting from that point where it is not necessary, it's for people now to look at what is of common interest to them and use actually whatever difference people have for opening up a discussion that drives towards what is good for all of them, not just for one group or the other or one person or another. This is the foundation one has to step on to move forward to deal with any division or tribalism. I think I have no worries that if you have good leaders like my brother here, Hage Geingob, you will have the problem solved. The leaders are supposed to be addressing this, and you have a leader I have worked with, I have known, and other leaders that he works with as a team. I'm sure they will all work together to address whatever problem. It's not necessary, but it's a problem that exists not only in Namibia, it has existed in other places. It has existed in my own country. Unfortunately, you find it is in many places, but we have to overcome it, and I'm sure Namibia will.
Could I just add? The way my sister put it is as if Namibia is now plunged into tribalism. I wouldn't say that. We came from divided society where there were Bantu stands here, where we were told you are this tribe, you belong there, but we formed a government, central government, and even racially brought our people together. What is happening is the question of people trying to get rich quickly. They see, they have a hope. They see the light at the end of a tunnel. They see others that side looking good, and they say, I am left out. Therefore, I must also hurry to be there. But in doing that, they show anger. They think they are left out. But I think to say tribalism as if, or racism, as if pervasive in Namibia is not true. I'm a minority. If tribalism was there, I wouldn't have been president. So we shouldn't a little bit be too rough on us as Namibians. Tribalism is raising its ugly head. So is also racism. But it's also caused by poverty. When people feel they are left out. And then they go back, of course, when a person is successful, I always say that I. But when a politician fails, he goes and says, we are left out. Those are the symptoms we are seeing now in this country. But we never tolerate tribalism, as long as I'm here. So it's not tribalism per se, it's Poverty driving people to think, I want to also be there. And then to say, our tribe is left out. Our region is left out. And nobody can leave any region out. I talk about a house I'm building composed of bricks, which are our ethnic groups. When you have plastered that wall, you must no longer identify this tribe, that race, and so on. Join me just to build that. They will make it.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The next question. Right. Thank you for the opportunity, Your Excellencies. My name is Akeo Sikela from the Namibia newspaper. I have two questions directed to President Kagame. There are speculations that your administration is ruling the country with a tight fist. We understand that free speech and freedom of the media is not guaranteed in Rwanda, and people, and your critics or people that criticize the government are harassed, continuously harassed, and some of them apparently disappear. Can you just maybe tell us what is happening in Rwanda with regards to free speech? The second question is with regards to your term in office. You have been in power for almost about 2 decades, and we understand that there are also plans that you might rule for until 2034. Can you tell us maybe, do you have plans to step down as president of Rwanda and let other people lead? Mm-hmm. Or are you planning to stay in power until eternity? Thank you.
All right. One, have you ever been to Rwanda? I invite you to come and see and hear from people. Talk to Rwandans. I think that's the most important thing. If you hear from Rwandans directly, if you see for yourself, feel free to ask whatever question you want, but directly hear from people that will maybe answer the first question much better than I would. But what I know as leads my country, lives there, works with the people, and I have come to be president on the basis of the choice of the people of Rwanda. And I think together in the country, we've been making good progress on many fronts. Also, we have come from a very low base on everything, whether it is poverty or human rights or independent and freedom of independence or freedom of speech, which you all talked about. We have come from a very low base. I think we've been taking the country to a much better situation than where we have been. Are there problems in my country, or have there been problems? Absolutely. We are one of those countries that have had a lot of problems. The tragedy that befell my country 25 years ago, I think that is the story that is known all over the world. Unfortunately, we are more known for that than better things that have happened thereafter. And we make progress not to be credited for it. We really make progress for ourselves. But as you said, there are speculations. In fact, that's what I wanted to clear with you, that instead of having speculations reach you, if you are in a place, if you see, if you hear from people directly, then you are able to answer the questions arising out of speculations. I can confidently say here today and now that the people of my country working very hard to improve their lives. They are happy with what they have, whether it is in terms of their leaders or with each other, working together and making a difference for themselves between 25 years ago and now. If you find a much better place than we have in our country, I invite you to let me know. So we are very fine, really. But with the problems that we have to deal with every day there is a problem. I think the President, my brother here, mentioned poverty that creates other problems and so on. We have to deal with that as well. And we have been reducing the problem levels of poverty very fast, in actual fact. So it is helping us to resolve those other issues that people talk about. So I just give you guarantees that we are doing fine. On the second question about my position, my responsibility as regards being president up to when. Well, first of all, to begin with, I wasn't sure I was becoming president before I became president. I didn't even plan so hard to become one. Fate drove me to be president, and the people of my country in the end insisted I become president for them. I've been doing everything possible to fit in that role of leading my people and working with my people to address as many problems we have as well and hard as we can. And last year, 2 years ago, 2017, when we had elections, before that, actually, I had wanted to say to them that I needed to have them choose my successor. They are the ones who declined and said they wanted me to go on. This is on record. Whether it was in my party, the Rwandese Patriotic Front, or the outside parties, they decided I continue. They carried out the changes they carried out. But I also have told them publicly and continue to tell them that, yes, sometimes I follow their dictates in as far as that particular problem is concerned. But they should also consider my position as a human being and the position I may hold that has good grounds. So we might have to resolve this matter between us, or among us, and between me and them going forward. So don't worry about how far you go in leading my people. I think let them worry about that. And they will solve that problem, and I will be there working with them to address that problem.
Thank you, His Excellency, for the response. Next question.
Good afternoon or good morning, Your Excellencies. My name is Edward Mumbu. I'm a journalist with the Namibia Press Agency, NAMPA. My first question is directed to our two presidents. Firstly, I want you to brief us on the meeting that you had. What areas of cooperation perhaps the two countries are exploring, what Namibia can learn from Rwanda, and what Rwanda can also learn from us. That's one. Yeah, the second question is on the economy, the economic growth of Rwanda, which is projected at just a little bit over 7%, if I'm correct. How have you been able to do this at a time when the global economy is actually not doing that well? And tying in with this one is, there are also reports that these figures have been cooked up and they do not reflect the reality on the ground. Yeah, Mr. Kagame, just tell us.
Mm-hmm. The President?
Yeah, young man, thank you very much. We are here to learn. The President is going to give the answer. But between us, I make jokes with you. You want to say, I said, it's none of your business. And that became a story. I was joking with you. Don't do that. Otherwise, you're not going to remain friends, huh? Mm-hmm. Okay? Very good.
Yes, thank you. The growth of our economy, to begin with, is real. It's very real. It's felt by the people of our country. It originates with them. They are the ones who toil and put in hard work every day in everything. If you look at how much our agriculture has grown, for example, to a point of, first of all, food security level, if we see how people are able to feed themselves, which has never been the case before. In fact, growth, for example, in that sector of agriculture started about 12 years ago. We had never had growth in our agriculture sector ever in the history of our country until maybe 12 years ago. That's when we started seeing. And it's not just growth by numbers, it's growth that is felt in farmers' pockets, in how they are able to feed themselves or sell what they produce to neighboring countries. So this is why it is very easy to measure the impact, some of the aspects of our growth, so that you can't cook these numbers unless, and if you are able to do that, and everybody in the world that deals with you in actually scrutinizing these numbers also follows that, then there is a problem in the world. It's not a problem just in Rwanda. If everybody follows the cooked numbers when they are every day in the country, and if Rwandans who tell you, if I went into details to prove the point that what is happening in Rwanda is real, we would probably spend the whole day here, so I won't do that. But really, when we have a population that is also growing, we have economy that is growing, and if you have an economy that is growing at the same time having a population growing, it means something is really being done at a very fast rate. And if you see what you see and hear from people's experience, you start understanding that what we are doing is real. Again, if you can visit, this conversation is better to be had directly with the people. If you came to my country, we'll make sure that you have access to any part of the country, talk to the people directly. They will tell you the story that, or you will see things they will show you that will make you believe that the improvements in our economy, in the well-being of our people, are real. So what else can I say about that? But there is still room for improvement, for things to be covered, and we are working hard to achieve that. So, by the way, I also found out recently the people who are responsible for that study about cooking numbers relating to our growth and improvement. When I also asked them, I said, have you ever been to Rwanda? I found they haven't been there. So that's really fascinating, because everyone who wants to be the authority on a country, on what is happening in the country, doesn't know the country. And when you push hard and challenge, they start telling you, no, but we heard this thing from so-and-so. We went on the internet, and I mean, the internet is not the best place to look for the truth that you want to believe. Certainly there is a lot of information there, but you have to do, some selection of what is real and what is not real and what you want to believe. So, but here we are, our country, we feel, but by the way, if we cooked numbers, we would be cheating ourselves. We wouldn't be cheating anybody else. I don't think these people who write stories about us are people we want to please or to satisfy that. No, we want to satisfy ourselves. And I think it originates from also the stereotypes, the prejudice that is always out there. It's as if Africans can't do fine. Africans have to be doing things that must be validated by others somewhere. But we don't need any validation. We want to do things that benefit us, that put us in a place where we want to be. It's not that we want to please these guys who tell a lot of stories about us.
Yeah, let me just also use this opportunity to say that there was an article, Frontline, Namibia is sinking in corruption. 75% of Namibians apparently expressed that. Now I just finished nationwide town hall meetings. Corruption question came out twice in 14, over 10,000 people were consulting. They were talking about bread and butter issues. Corruption issue was mentioned in Swakopmund by one businessman who talked about the road from Okahanja to Windhoek, and that we have extended to same builder. Isn't that a corruption if you didn't advertise and so on? We answered him. We did it transparently, openly. Look at the figures. If you are going to have a new company to come, first you advertise, you take time. Then they have to come and establish themselves, bring in their equipment and so on. That would be $80 million just to bring equipment. They have to also pay those who are there to now move their things, 70 million. And then time spent. We are saving 200 million. Now you rather want to waste the time, plus to get new people to come to prove the point. As long as we are transparent and answer, we did that. We are saving the country $200 million. But I did at least consult the whole country. And I got two people talking about corruption. Somebody sitting in the office, in one of your offices, is writing to say 75% Namibians are feeling Namibia is sinking in corruption. That's what the president is talking about. So I went all over, 14 regions, sitting in a meeting for 7 hours, listening, people asking questions that didn't come up.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Time is not really on our side, but I'll allow one more last question.
Thank you so much. My name is Blanche, a journalist at the Namibian Broadcasting Corporation. My two questions just on regional and continental matters. Firstly, President Kagame, you have a very beautiful capital city. With my first question, I also need a comment from the former SADC chairperson on this. In the past, your government or your country has expressed willingness to join SADC, as the SADC bloc. I just want to know whether those sentiments are still there, and also just a comment from President Geingob. And my second question is on the post-2020 agreement that Africa is still negotiating with the European Union, the Cotonou Agreement. Under your chairmanship, President Kagame, AU expressed to say that it's time Africa negotiates as a bloc and leave out the ACP countries, because according to you, there are issues facing Africa as a continent alone. You gave examples of migrants and refugees and so on. So do you still feel that way? Because Namibia was one of those countries strongly objecting to ACP countries being left out, saying that they are African. I thank you.
May I go first, President?
Yeah. Well, firstly, okay, let me go first.
Okay.
Let's go back to the formation of OAU. With two blocks, Casablanca and Monrovia bloc. President Nyerere and Kwame Nkrumah, I would say. Kwame Nkrumah wanted to have an immediate union of Africa. And Nyerere says, now let's have first regional integration. We're still going to arrive there. So given that we therefore have regional commissions, RECs, to harmonize regional development, with the aim of one day becoming one. There are subsets of AU, the RECs. So therefore, one day we have to join each one of them. It doesn't matter if I'm going to join one of them. So if Rwanda wants to come one day to join, fulfill the requirements, these RECs are subsets of AU. If you're a member of the AU, one day you want to have now continental free trade area. You are going towards that one. So if you want to come and start to join, as I was telling the ministers, if you're a cabinet minister and it's a committee, cabinet committee, you can come and sit in and listen. It's a subcommittee of the cabinet. Same thing applies here.
Thank you. But there is something, President, I'm reminded we left out, maybe about cooperation between our two countries. I'll quickly say something what we discussed. I think this is the usual two levels really. One, we were talking about our bilateral relations, and the discussion was broad. It covers almost all the areas you would understand, and I'm sure our people have been fine-tuning specific areas of cooperation which will be made known to you, but it was broad. Bilateral relations, there are no restrictions to which area, any of those areas. Each of the areas we learn from each other. There is something to learn from one another. Rwanda learning a number of things from Namibia, Namibia learning few things from Rwanda. We want to tighten that. We are spoiled for choice and a number of things to learn from one another. The other level is how we work together bilaterally, but stepping from that, we look at matters continental. The continent has been undertaking reforms that affect the whole continent, all of us. And Namibia has been very involved and supportive of the reforms that Africa must undertake to keep getting better in all areas, in all fronts. So those are, in a nutshell, things we discussed in just before we came here. Then to your questions, one, I think the President has helped me answer the question about whether we still pursue being members of SADC. I think if you are aware, there are things going on already to try and merge SADC, COMESA, ECOWAS, and so on. We are moving towards bringing these institutions together. So for me, as I understand it, there is not that much urgency to say I want to belong to that, say I want to belong to that, because the tendency is and the trend is to bring all these things to work together. So if we are working together, I'm happy that that is the best way to go. So then on the Cotonou stuff, I think there is clarification here to be made. Most of the things, in my view, even apply to some kind of logic and rationale. In fact, it wasn't to do away with the Caribbean and the Pacific countries. In my view, it was to rationalize, to say there are things that actually apply specifically between Africa, as we know it, continental Africa, and the European Union. And then there are others that may apply between Europe and Africa, Caribbean and Pacific. So those are there. In fact, if you also look at the history of how that happened, SCP as to where they were building on certain things. And for example, when there are discussions between EU and AU, there are things that apply in that sense that do not necessarily always have to apply to something else. If there are, for example, trade issues that are going to be discussed that are specific between African countries and the EU, to insist that they also must apply the same way to others, that may create some discomfort, I'm sure, with many people. But if we are talking about, say, even political issues that cover a broad range of area, it is useful to be discussing matters covering Africa and other related or closely related areas like Caribbean and even Pacific. So it wasn't more to do with discarding one part and say it doesn't belong to us or doesn't relate to us. In my understanding from the beginning, it was technically a way of easing how we deal with each other. And these discussions are still going on, and the moment people are sitting down and putting their heads to that, I think always a way will be found out, even where people understand things differently. I think there is a way of, it's not that one is rigid for this position, another is rigid for that position. The problem is always having to understand what one is talking about and what the other is talking about, and then we find harmony. in what we reach as an outcome. I think that's the way I understood it from the beginning.
I'll just add, as I always say, when diplomacy fails, countries go to war. Mm-hmm. When dialogue stops, there will be misunderstandings. So the fact that we have to come and disagree or have different points of view, by being there and debating and so on, not shooting at each other, we find solutions. So as the President said, we find solutions to accommodate both views. That's why you go to meetings, to debate, to talk, convince each other, and then move on. We are doing that.
We are really running out of time, and we, unless I have a permission from Excellency to allow more one question.
Last one.
Last one.
Good day, Your Excellencies. My name is Albertina Nakale from New Era newspaper. My question goes to President Kagame regarding the refugees. Namibia, of course, is housing a lot of refugees, including Rwandese. And I just wanted to find out, what is your government doing to help to try to promote this voluntary repatriation of these nationals, perhaps? Because, of course, Namibia has done its part to repatriate a handful of them. So I just want to find out what your government is doing in terms of repatriation.
We've been doing a lot for the last, I should say, more actively in the last 15 years. Before that, we were still bringing refugees back home. If you remember, even in mid-90s, we brought millions of people back home. And this created, we wanted people back home as urgently as we approached it. And we had millions of people coming back home. You remember there were so many people in the DRC, then there were so many in Tanzania, so many in Burundi, especially in neighboring countries. And we brought home our people in millions. Others stayed out of our country. In neighboring countries, there are very few still remaining, and then beyond, especially in Southern Africa, meaning this whole region, has refugees. You find them in Zambia, Malawi, Mozambique, here in Namibia, and, a few in Botswana, South Africa itself. There are many. Many, because even one for us shouldn't be a refugee if we can convince them to come home. But that point, voluntary, is very key. And when it is voluntary, then, strictly by that word, some people choose not to come back home. For one reason, they may think, I give an example. We had people who were supposed to come back home, and Rwanda is very small geographically. We are one of the most densely populated countries in the world. Having now about 13 million people in just a small space. So some people, when they are outside, they say, oh, we have more breathing space here. And choose not to come back. Much as we want them to come back, because long ago, before actually we took power, the government in Rwanda, the genocidal government that was there, used to tell people that they cannot come back because the country is too small. This was the argument they used. And we were saying, no, if a country wants back its people, rightly so, the country is never too small. People will always fit in their country, no matter what. So we have pursued encouraging people to come back home and even supporting them to come back home, and working with UNHCR, the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. We have worked with them from the beginning, and even the institution is responsible for migration at the UN level. They have all got involved. And for us, we've been telling people, whoever wants to come back home is welcome. And many people came under that arrangement, and they're still, anyone who still says he wants to come back home, everything is done and availed to make them come home. Those who, for their own reasons, say, no, I can't go home for one reason or another, justified or not, that's why we still have some of them outside. But the principle that is clear and has been implemented over the years is to want our people back home, and whenever they want to come back home and give them support, we can give them. And but of the big problem we had 20 years ago, or slightly before that, maybe we have addressed 90+% of the problem. What really remains is that region of 5%. Yes.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies, Honorable Ministers, Medias. We have come to the end of the program.